This is one of the most important corrections for a software-generated label. PPWR allows a manufacturer to appoint an authorized representative by written mandate. The mandate must allow the representative to keep the declaration of conformity and technical documentation available, cooperate with authorities, provide information, and terminate the mandate if the manufacturer acts contrary to the regulation. For single-use packaging, the relevant documents are kept for 5 years. For reusable packaging, 10 years. But Article 17 does not create a general requirement to print the authorized representative's details on every package. The on-pack operator duties are written for the manufacturer and importer. The representative also cannot take over the manufacturer's duty to ensure that compliant packaging is placed on the market, or the duty to draw up the technical documentation. So, in software, the right workflow is: first ask whether a written PPWR mandate exists. If yes, collect the representative's details and mandate reference. Then offer the representative block as optional label information, while always preserving the mandatory manufacturer and, where applicable, importer fields. This distinction lets Lappa offer a useful representative service without overstating what the package itself must display. The QR code is useful because it can carry several types of compliance information without overcrowding the package. But we should be precise about what it is doing. Job 1 is operator contact. Article 15 allows manufacturer information to be indicated on the packaging or through a QR code or another data carrier. Job 2 is component sorting. In addition to the future harmonized label, a business may use a QR code to tell consumers where each separate component should go. Job 3 is reusable packaging. Once the reusable packaging labeling rule applies, further information about the reuse system, collection points, and rotations must be available through a QR code or other standardized open digital carrier, subject to the open loop exception. Job 4 is EPR identification. From 12th February 2027, an EPR scheme symbol is allowed only in a QR code or another standardized open digital marking technology. The page behind the code should be stable, package-specific, and easy to use. Electronic compliance information should not be mixed with marketing. Personal data collection must be limited to what is necessary. And when the Article 12 label applies, the information must also be available before an online purchase. For software design, store the QR purpose explicitly. A generic Add QR Code button is not enough. PAP20 is a good example of why we need to distinguish material identification from the future PPWR label. PAP20 comes from the existing material identification system. It tells us that the packaging is corrugated fiberboard. It does not tell us that every collection system will accept the package, and it is not evidence that the package meets a PPWR recyclability grade. During the transition, companies need to check both the current national rules and the timing of the EU harmonized system. Do not remove required national information too early, but do not design your long-term platform around a collection of permanent, country-specific sorting labels. The Commission's 2026 guidance describes Article 12 labeling as exhaustive and fully harmonized, except for deposit return schemes. That means after the EU system applies, member states should not keep additional national sorting labels next to it. The future EU label is intended to match the label on the relevant waste receptacle. That is what makes the system useful. The consumer sees the same visual language on the package and on the bin. Finally, separate the label from environmental claims. PAP20 is a code. 100% recyclable is a claim and requires evidence under Article 14. PPWR. Labeling is not just about what appears on the physical packaging. Article 12 also requires the relevant label information to be available to consumers before they make an online purchase. That means this applies not only to the pack itself, but also to brand websites, marketplaces, and product information feeds. A customer should not have to buy the product first, open the parcel, or search through a support center just to find regulated packaging information. The most practical way to manage this is to work from one controlled packaging record. The same approved information should then be published in 3 places: on the physical artwork, on the label or QR destination page, and on the online product page. Version control is important here. If the packaging composition changes, the physical label, the QR page, and the online listing should all be updated together. Otherwise, we can easily end up with a marketplace showing an old label while the customer receives a different version of the package. That creates both a compliance risk and unnecessary confusion. This is where a Lappa screen can be useful. For example, we can show the packaging profile, the generated label preview, and the publication status. The key point is that this is not a separate e-commerce label. It is the same controlled packaging information, simply made visible before purchase. Here is the workflow I recommend for managing PPWR compliance in software. It is simple enough for a small brand, but structured enough for an audit. First, create the packaging profile with the key details: packaging name and format, SKU, market, first placing on the market date, and whether it is single-use or reusable. Next, add the packaging components. For each one, record the material, weight, subtype, separability, and supplier evidence. This becomes the source data for both the label and the technical documentation. Then assign the legal roles, identify the manufacturer, check whether there is an importer, and confirm whether a written, authorized representative mandate exists. The AR should not appear as mandatory by default. Once the data is complete, the software can generate the main outputs: the controlled label, QR compliance page, online product information, and EU declaration of conformity. Finally, control the evidence. Material statements, sorting instructions, and environmental claims should be supported by supplier declarations, test reports, calculations, or assessments. Any change to the material, supplier, or artwork should trigger a review. This table shows how the software should classify the fields for the cardboard box example. The package identifier is required. The manufacturer block is required. An importer block is conditional. It appears only when the supply chain includes an importer with a PPWR obligation. The authorized representative can be stored and shown, but the on-pack field should be optional. PAP20 is current or transitional information. It should be linked to the material record, but it should not be treated as the final harmonized PPWR label. The future EU pictogram is marked later and remains unavailable until the official artwork and application date are confirmed. The QR code is permitted, but its purpose needs to be selected. Here, the code could lead to the manufacturer contact details and component-level sorting information. If the box were reusable, the QR would have additional obligations when the reusable label rule applies. This is an important product design point. A form that simply asks for text cannot protect the user. The software must calculate applicability from the package type, material, market, dates, and operator roles. If a mandatory field is missing, it should block a final label. If future artwork is not yet legally available, it should generate only a draft or placeholder, never a document presented as final. Before publishing, run 7 checks. First, the package itself. The identifier must match the exact specification and artwork revision. A label for a carton should not accidentally point to the bottle technical file. Second, the manufacturer. PPWR's manufacturer definition can depend on who has the packaging designed or manufactured under its own name or trademark, with a special micro-enterprise rule. The software should not assume the brand owner is always the packaging manufacturer without asking the relevant questions. Third, check whether an importer exists and whether its details are required. Fourth, support the materials. A paper carton may still contain inks, adhesives, coatings, or a plastic window. The label and technical file should describe the complete packaging unit. Fifth, substantiate claims. Recyclable, compostable, and recycled content statements are not decorative copy. They need evidence. Sixth, apply the date logic. The PPWR uses several later of dates and transition rules. Seventh, make every channel match: package, QR page, online listing, and declaration of conformity. The system should block a final output if mandatory fields are missing, evidence is pending, or the user is trying to use future official artwork that has not been confirmed. It may still generate a clearly watermarked draft for review. Let me leave you with 3 key takeaways. First, there is no single PPWR sticker. We need to separate the different requirements: packaging traceability, manufacturer and importer information, future harmonized material and sorting labels, and digital information where it is required. Second, data comes before artwork. The most useful thing companies can do today is build a reliable packaging composition record, define the correct economic operator roles, and collect the necessary supporting evidence. Once the official specifications and application dates are confirmed, the required labels can be added to the artwork. Third, a QR code should be treated as a compliance tool, not simply as an additional design element. It needs a clear purpose, a stable destination, proper version control, and a clear separation between compliance information and marketing content. This is exactly where Lappa can help. The platform can turn complex PPWR requirements into a guided workflow, helping you manage packaging data, requirements, and compliance tasks in one place. If you are ready to simplify your PPWR compliance process, you can register on Lappa and start working with your packaging data directly on the platform. Thank you for joining us today.